the domestic worker is very much part of the South African employment situation, part of South African middle-class culture. You have somebody to look after your home, clean your home, look after your children when they are young, particularly nowadays with so many homes having two parents working. For the last 8 years, Sweepsouth has been doing a domestic worker pay and working condition report. Africa talked about an aspect of it earlier with somebody from a union representing the domestic workers, spoke about the aspect primarily of the huge number of workers who are domestic workers who are not being paid close to the minimum wage and who don't have the legally mandated contracts of employment. Some of the other aspects to come out of it: domestic workers earning a median of 3,635 rand a month. That's 900 rand short of the 4,500 needed for basic living costs. 19% lost their jobs in the last year. About half of those because the employers have moved abroad, and sort of 1 in 5 because the employer could no longer afford to employ the domestic worker. 12% only registered for UIF, so that means no safety net for a vast majority of domestic workers. 43% of domestic workers have matric, 18% have a higher education, diploma or degree, but they seem to be trapped in low-wage work because the economy cannot absorb and them into higher paying, more skilled jobs. Lourandi Kriel is the CEO of Sweepsouth and joins us now. Lourandi, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too.
It's not news. I wish it were a shock and a surprise to learn that a very high percentage of domestic workers are not being paid the minimum wage, but that's something that we kind of know to be a reality, a terrible reality, but one that is there. The one thing that immediately struck me as being, wow, I didn't know that, was the relatively high level of academic qualification of many domestic workers. These are not people who left school by choice or by circumstance at the end of, grade 10 and went into domestic work. Many of them, you would think, have the capability to do higher skilled work than domestic labour?
Yes. Like you said, almost half of domestic workers have finished matric and about 18% have a post-high school education. But what we see on the Sweepsouth platform is that many South Africans or many workers use our platform as a springboard into other types of work, or to work while they study towards, say, nursing or teaching or starting their own business. They use domestic work as kind of an entry into other forms of employment. And I think the stat that stands out is that 86% of domestic workers surveyed indicates that they do want formal training and they want to further themselves. And I think what is amazing is that 30% of the respondents are already using free online education and training tools to improve and better themselves.
And what they need is a job environment which is capable of absorbing them once they've, they use the domestic work to get some money into the house and then do the skills training on the side. But unfortunately, we don't have an economy that absorbs people without experience in the particular job for which they are applying. So there really is a sort of trap element to domestic work.
Yes, there's two things. We've done extensive research before launching our childcare and our elder care services on the platform. There's two elements in South Africa. We have had no or very low economic growth, 0.7% according to the World Bank in the last 10 years. That's the one side. The other side is we're sitting with a huge youth unemployment problem. 50% of our youth is not employed. And like you said, they sit in that trap. You need experience to kind of get a job. That's the one thing. And the other thing is when they are skilled, there's often a skills mismatch, or they've skilled themselves in an area that the economy does not demand. So we are working very hard towards creating a career pathway for youth, South African youth, mostly female, through domestic work, childcare, or elder care for higher earnings. And I am very passionate about, and I do believe South Africa could possibly be contributing to be the biggest contributor to the world's care economy globally.
1 in 10, roughly, not registered for UIF. That is another worrying statistic, because if you do lose your job because your employer has been downsized, and, put on short time or moved abroad or whatever the reasons are, then there's nothing other than standing at a traffic light and handing out little pieces of paper saying that you're available for work. And look, it wasn't easy to register my domestic worker for UIF. Eventually I resorted to paying a professional to do it for me, because I was finding it incredibly frustrating to try and deal with the unemployment insurance fund. But so, once a month I pay UIF for my domestic worker. And it's really worrying that 90% of domestic workers don't have that inadequate and incompetently administered safety net, but a safety net nevertheless.
Yes, good on you that you have registered and you've gone through the process of paying UIF for your domestic worker. It is a notoriously complex process, and it's really difficult. So we do see incrementally year on year improvement in registration of UIF, and domestic workers that lose their jobs that is registered on UIF through the research. We see an incremental uptick. It's obviously not enough, but we do believe that through collaboration and using technology, with the private sector, we are a tech business, and government, we could look at making the UIF process just more seamless. But it's not a one company or one person solution. I think if we simplify the process and perhaps integrate it with a form of technology or and information and data, it could be streamlined, and that we could see an increase in domestic workers being registered for UIF.
Lourandi Kriel is the CEO of Sweepsouth, speaking about the survey that they have done annually for 8 years, the results of the latest survey. In many ways, though domestic work is relatively unskilled, it is incredibly responsible, particularly if it involves childcare, which a lot of domestic work does. And I handed over. Bulelwa has a set of keys. Bulelwa comes in. Bulelwa knows exactly what to do. She works efficiently and industriously, and she nurtures my home. And the thought of trying to pay her, I pay her considerably above the minimum wage, considerably above. But the thought of trying to pay her less because it's supposedly an unskilled job, it's just, I don't know how people can do that. These are people that you invite into your home. They do the most intimate things for you. They look after your children. They nurture your home. Pay them properly, for goodness sake.